Good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, February 7th. It is 8:47 a.m. This is the Commerce and Economic Development Committee, and we are here with our intern, Helen Hargraves. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you again this week. For the record, I'm Helen Hargraves. I'm the House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development legislative intern for this session, and a senior at the University of Vermont. This week, I followed the Senate Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. New bills in the committee include Bill S-34, an act relating to lowering the rate of increase for mobile home lot rents. Bill S-37, an act relating to unemployment insurance eligibility and benefits. And Bill S-48, which was previously here, Bill H-34, an act relating to workforce leadership in Vermont. All read for the first time. The first two read for the first time and were from the committee last week. The work.
I'm gonna slow you down just for a second. So H-34 and S-48 are companion bills. So they were both introduced identically in both bodies.
Okay.
And so we voted it out of our side, and they're gonna take it up as H-34, not as S-48, so that it has a quicker passage.
Okay. Perfect. That's a good clarification. Thank you.
That looks like.
No, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Dear.
Regarding bill activity in committee, the first bill so far to see action in the committee is Bill S-37, an act relating to unemployment insurance eligibility and benefits. If you boiled that bill down to one sentence, the goal is to give school support staff access to the basic right to apply for unemployment insurance. In federal law, I believe that instructional staff are not permitted to apply for unemployment insurance, given that the structure of their employment is based on the idea that there is a summer break where they won't be paid. However, this bill aims to separate support staff from that and allow them to be able to apply for unemployment insurance during that summer interim period. They heard testimony from the Vermont National Educators Association, from Rebecca McBroom, General Counsel for the VNEA, and Colin Robinson, the Political Director of the VNEA. For clarification, support staff includes bus drivers, food service workers, administrative assistants, and paraeducators, which was a focus in the discussion of this bill. And Vermont VNEA's argument essentially is that support staff are crucial to the function and the care of students in schools, but they are underpaid and usually underemployed. They usually don't fulfill the minimum 40 hours for full-time, even though they are employed under the term full-time. They are some of the lowest paid workers in Vermont. They average less than $19 an hour. So they're hourly wage employees. And the average wage in Vermont is over 30 an hour. And again, they're not paid during the summer. So they also wanted to touch on the common misconception that paraeducators in particular are generally people who are just taking up extra employment, don't necessarily need the money from it, but are doing that as, an extra addition to their income every year. But they say about 39% of paraprofessionals are the primary wage earners in their household, and over a third of paraprofessionals are not able to survive on that income alone. Many pick up other jobs during the summer or work other jobs simultaneously during the school year. And another issue to support this bill brought up by VNEA is that retention is absolutely crucial to maintaining this service for our schools. And without access to unemployment insurance, they are seeing a loss of these support staff to higher paying jobs. So they're not able to retain them. Let's see. So they also heard from the Department of Labor, from the Commissioner Michael Harrington and General Counsel Robert Depper. And they brought a bit of a counterpoint. They have some concerns regarding the ability to actually get this to coincide with the federal law. So para educators are by nature instructional. And therefore it would be difficult for them to apply for unemployment insurance because of the federal law that prohibits that. So they say it may be wise to look into that going forward to make sure they don't run into that problem at the last second. They also predict significant uptake in unemployment insurance. And they estimate that the cost to Vermonters would be about 16 million, which they pointed out, and Senator Chittenden also pointed out, ultimately raises taxes for Vermont citizens, therefore contradicting the efforts to decrease property taxes at the moment. Senator Brock brought up the discussion of cost, which is again very important. And to counter this point, Vermont VNEA cited an experience in Minnesota that has implemented a bill very similar to the one that they're proposing, where they expected the cost to be much, much higher than it turned out to be. And based on an Environmental Policy Institute analysis, the cost ended up being around 5 million in Minnesota. Senator Brock also brought up the question of whether or not support staff could apply for unemployment insurance, given that one of the requirements is to be actively seeking work during that time. The Department of Labor Commissioner reminded them that there is a return to work provision, where in Vermont, if you have a reasonable assurance of return to work within a 10-week period, you are not required to be actively seeking employment at that time. So the committee has asked for further resources from both. There's no indication of whether or not that will be moving forward yet. That is all that I know as of this week. Moving on, other key points from the week, Senator Ram Hinsdale introduced. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
On the UI issue, is there any discussion or explanation for why support staff included within the bargaining unit of, the rest of the employees of the district?
As in unionization, collective bargaining, or?
The way I understand it, at least, it's two separate negotiations, one with teachers and one with support staff. Yes. So was there any discussion? I've always been puzzled by that. I can't tend to think that it puts sports staff in that worse position. I didn't know. Maybe it didn't.
So Herb, your question is, was there any discussion on why they have two separate unions? Why they negotiate two separate contracts? Why it's two separate unions?
Right. It's
Okay,
one.
I just want to understand the question.
Yeah. And I think the answer.
Not in this meeting, though. But yeah. Moving forward, Senator Ram Hinsdale introduced her workforce omnibus that is still a work in progress. And they had very little time to introduce it, so it was very brief. I don't have a lot of details on what that looks like, but she broke it down into sections. The first and second section are addressing the farm workers' minimum wage and overtime payment issue that were discussed, I think, a week or two ago. The third section addresses requiring payment of accrued but unused vacation time upon separation from employment. And then sections 4 through 7 address a variety of issues, including workers' comp changes. No specifics on those changes. We're given unemployment insurance for faculty, I believe, at colleges, particularly related to the State College of Vermont. Minimum wage for incarcerated individuals and prevailing wage for construction projects. No specifics given on those. They had a very brief time to discuss it, but one flag that was put on section 8 by Sophie Zdatny, the legislative council, was that contingent faculty members would be eligible for unemployment insurance under this proposal if they did not have a reasonable assurance of return to work. The committee also heard from a variety of departments this week on housing and economic development. Summit Properties came to speak on economic development. That pertained mostly to housing, but two key takeaways from that were that Act 250 is proving to be inhibitory to development of new housing. And median priced housing currently is not actually accessible to middle and low income households, which further ties into what the Vermont Futures Project presented subsequently, which is that housing and workforce are very closely intertwined, particularly the way that they are looking at it this session. Vermont Futures Project presented an expansion goal of over 802,000 Vermonters by 2035. And they discussed essentially that in order for this to happen, we need to increase the workforce population significantly. And that ties into our housing availability issues. So in that conversation, Senator Weeks brought up Rutland as a particular example. And his question is, if we have a housing crisis going on, how are there over 2,000 offline homes in Rutland currently? And the explanation, potential explanation given by Kevin Chu, I believe it is, at the Vermont Futures Project, is that this may be seen around Vermont in different, it's very location specific, but that is based most likely on the ratio between jobs and available housing. So a focus I think that Senator Weeks is interested in, and Senator Ram Hinsdale has also taken up as an interest, is in seeing where they can implement economic development in Rutland in order to create more job opportunities to be able to use that housing. Moving on from that, they also met with the several different groups. They had a discussion on rural economic development, where they had an update on two initiatives, the Farm and Forest Viability Program and the Rural Economic Development Initiative. So the Farm and Forest Viability Program briefly is a business development program which is designed to help farmers compete in an international market. They coordinate with the towns and municipalities to determine whether or not to conserve certain areas of land or develop them. And Senator Ram Hinsdale did mention that they passed a bill last year, which did not actually end up facilitating this in the way that they were hoping to. I believe accessory businesses related to farms was one of the topics discussed. And it seems that the bill that they mentioned did not actually allow or maybe conflicted with federal law. And prevented them from actually taking advantage of that. The Rural Economic Development Initiative helps farmers to access federal grants that they wouldn't already be able to access. Communities as well, not just farmers. And the update was essentially that they were able to access over $22 million in federal grants in the last couple of years. And the projects that were helped by this were something like trails, general stores, general economic opportunities for rural areas. Finally, just
Yep, go ahead, Bert.
On this part of this rural economic development initiative, who is proposing that, and is there a document that flex, what the pieces do?
there is most likely a document linked on the Senate committee page. I can check that out for you.
Okay. And
Um,
probably identify who's proposing it, I guess.
Yes.
Can I answer it real quick?
So, yeah.
It's a VHCB program. It
Oh,
exists, so they must have been giving an update.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you Google it, it'll come up. They help with grant writing for rural communities and other stuff.
Okay.
So, sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
Thank you.
Right.
And very briefly, they did have an update from the Home Act and the Act 181, from the VNRC, the LURB, and VAPTA. That was a very in-depth discussion of, how it works, introducing it to the committee. I think there was a little debate among the committee around whether or not that actually serves the interest of all Vermonters. Senator Brock brought up that not necessarily all Vermonters want to live in a developed area. It was a consistent theme that not all Vermonters want more people to come into the states and want to keep things the same or decrease the population. That's just mainly a side note about, the sentiments around Vermont right now. But it seems like the majority are aimed at increasing population, increasing workforce. But Senator Brock did note that we want to make sure that we allow for flexibility for multiple options so that people can choose whether or not they live or have an area near them developed. And
Sorry, did it seem like he was recommending changes to the act that was Act 181 that was passed last year? Or did it just seem like it was a discussion on how it's moving going forward?
I don't believe there were changes. I don't believe he's looking at changes specifically at the moment. But that is something that I think he is very aware of and would like to make sure it's implemented in a way that allows for that flexibility. Yeah, no concrete changes to my position. Yep. They also met with the Vermont Bankers Association, had a financing update, and a key takeaway from that is just that inflation, interest rates, and particularly uncertainty around the new federal administration policy coming up are challenges to development in Vermont at the moment. And I am happy to take any questions if there are any at this point. That is it for the report.
Questions for Helen? You have your hand up?
Thank you very much.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, really helpful.
Is anyone following any bills in any other committees that you want to highlight for us this morning? So in the committee that you are a liaison with, are there any bills that you want to highlight for us?
I'm Ways and Means, we know what they're working on. Health and welfare, no specific bills.
Okay.
But trying to follow, what they're doing. I think they're taking, sort of system-wide kind of perspective, and they're still collecting information. So it's difficult to say what's the direction they're gonna go.
Okay,
Not much in digital. You know, they have a board on the bill, but I was talking with one of the committee members, that's not really gonna come off the board.
okay.
Ag, etc., food. See, what is the title? Food resiliency and forestry. There's nothing that necessarily will cross paths with us, other than perhaps at our breakfast table, since one of the bills they were introduced to this week is an act relating to the standards for the care of egg-laying hens.
Okay. So for ag, if there's a right to repair bill that comes through there, it should come through us also.
Okay,
Keep an eye out for that one, in addition to any workforce or economic.
right.
I just, that one I think is a little bit, I don't think you would recognize that as something that would come to us, right, to repair, but it would start there.
Very good.
Helen, when you were talking about the unemployment insurance, I was surprised that they didn't have anybody from school business offices testify. They did get to the point that costs for everyone would go up, right? But costs for schools would go up if we make that change. There are a lot of how do you pull one group out of a contract and give them certain rights and not others, right? There are lots and lots of issues around that bill that they were discussing. The education is, okay, thank you. I don't think we have anything else this morning. We have floor at 9:30. There is a Republican caucus at 9:15 this morning that was just called, an email was just sent for everyone, so I don't want to hold anybody from that. If
Appreciate it.
to attend that. And then we are back here. What is our schedule? We are back here at 1, so we have time after 4 also today. Yes,
Time.
well, floor, I'm assuming
Oh,
it's not
floor,
gonna
yeah.
go from
Yeah, yeah.
9:30.
Like I said 4, I'm like, what?
No, good to ask that question. No, and we'll have a hard stop by 3 today, so.
Thank you.
Yep, so yeah, but we do have 1:45, 2:30, so we do have folks coming in and it'll be done by 3. So, great, thank you, everybody, appreciate
Thank you.
everyone made it in safely today, and I'll see you all after lunch.